Are digital twins enough to transform aquaculture? Or is the missing piece shared data? Most farms see everything inside the cage, but meet the fjord. Risks ride the currents, sea lice, algae, jellyfish, disease, turning proactive into reactive. Enter AquaCloud, Norway's neutral standardized platform that turns daily farm and ocean signals into region-level insights, with privacy by design and clear what never shared rules. My guest, Björgólfur, a biologist turned industry builder, united industry peers to share data under strict governance, spinning AquaCloud from a cluster project into an independent company. It's a masterclass in industry-level collaboration. Inside, what pushed producers to collaborate and unlock value from shared data? Why it matters from welfare and sustainability? The shift from digitalization to real digital transformation. Plus what's next from federated AI to remote operations. Listen now on Blue Tech Around the World.
Blue Tech Around the World, the reference podcast for blue technologies and ocean innovation.
Welcome to Blue Tech Around the World, the podcast where we explore blue technologies and ocean innovation. Today's episode is one for all the data lovers out there. We are diving into something that excites me both as a tech enthusiast and as an aquaculture advocate, which is ocean data, and more specifically, how data can transform the aquaculture industry. When we talk about ocean data, we often think of digital twins, which is advanced models that replicate ocean conditions in real time. But what happens when this data isn't kept in silos, when it's shared across an entire industry to tackle common challenges? And that's exactly what today's episode is about. We are heading to Norway, global leader in aquaculture, to talk about AquaCloud, a big data project designed to make fish farmers better together, driving sustainable growth through data sharing. AquaCloud was born out of the industry need to solve shared challenges collaboratively. It started under the Seafood Innovation Cluster, which I had the pleasure of visiting years ago in Bergen, in Norway. And back then, this project was just getting started. And I remember being really intrigued. Because, let's face it, data in aquaculture, like in many industries, is touchy. Sharing sensitive data between competitors, that's a big ask. And I was curious, how would they pull it off? How could they convince stakeholders across the value chain to collaborate? Well, today we'll get an answer. And since that visit, I've kept an eye on AquaCloud's journey. And fast forward to now, it's become a standalone company with growing traction and a clear mission, driving sustainable growth through data sharing. And joining me today is someone who has been at the heart of the journey, Björgólfur Hávarðsson. He is a tireless promoter of digital transformation in the aquaculture industry. As a business developer at AquaCloud, he works at the forefront of leveraging data and technology to enhance sustainability and efficiency in fish farming. Strong background in biologies and decades of international experience, Björgólfur has played a key role in bringing science, technology, and industry needs. His works include driving the introduction of new technology, supporting startups developing solutions for aquaculture, and fostering collaboration between industry players to accelerate digitalization. Passionate about data-driven situational awareness and decision-making, he plays an important role in transforming traditional fish farming practices into a more intelligent and future-ready sector. And full disclosure, I had the pleasure of knowing him since my visit to NCO Seafood Cluster in Bergen. But I'll be honest, my pronunciation of his Icelandic name is pretty terrible. So, as you kindly asked me from the very beginning, I'll stick with Boggi for this episode. So, Boggi, welcome to Blue Tech Around the World.
Thank you so much, Marilou, for having me. I've been looking forward to our conversation, and indeed, we have known each other for a number of years. So a lot has happened in those years, but we are on our way still. Like you said, I'm a biologist working with probably 11 species over my 40 years in the industry and in 7 or 8 countries. It has been incredibly clear for me how important it is to, within each species or country you're working, to have that common goal and common understanding of the situation you're in. So when I started actually working on AquaCloud 8 years ago, it was that understanding, being able to communicate to maintain good animal welfare. And if you do everything right with that, the money will flow afterwards. But you have to go and take all these difficult steps on the way. And the project then, AquaCloud, a company today, we sometimes call it a love child of the industry, because this was something that all the major players came together and said, this is something we need to do. So that's our birth in very short formulation. And you're pronouncing my name is excellent. I don't demand anything more perfect, but Boggi is what I go by. So
Thank you, Boggi. Actually, I'm so excited to finally have this conversation and having your internal view of this project. So yeah, let's dive straight into how AquaCloud works behind the scene. We know that data alone isn't enough. It's what you do with it that matters. Turning raw numbers into meaningful insight is where, let's say, the real magic happens. So can you describe AquaCloud journey from the very beginning? I think from collecting the data to translating to actionable insight for the aquaculture industry. Can you, just give us some insight about the origin and the journey regarding AquaCloud?
absolutely. Like I said, it was a result of a conversation between industry leaders who wanted to be able to share what they saw in their own data and enable each other to actually improve their, in that instance, sea lice management. Sea lice is and was then the biggest issue that we are facing, and the root cause of many of the other issues that the industry actually is struggling with today. And we have to be honest and open with that. We have things to resolve, and having the same basis of fact is incredibly important for companies to actually achieve these goals. So sharing data within a legally defined space was sort of the tool we found out that we could use. The first thing we had to do is actually find that common space, because these companies are traded internationally as a limited companies. So there are all kinds of rules and legal procedures that have to be maintained, and the governance around the company was the fundament you build everything on. Without good governance, you're going nowhere really fast. So you have to have initial need, the trust to cooperate, solving that need. Then you have to go all the steps of good governance, finding what you want to do with the data, and maintaining that trust while you develop databases, accesses, and then using it. And some of the data is used in research projects. So we have to be comfortable with the data quality and the governance that we share with it. So it grew from that project in Seafood Innovation Cluster, where I was the innovation manager at the time. A couple of years ago, it was spun out as a company and is now an individual company with our board of managers, our own finances, and 4 employees. So we are a startup. That's my 4th startup, so it's a fun situation to be in.
Congratulations, Boggi. So if I understand well, at the beginning it was really to tackle one of the biggest challenges for the Norwegian aquaculture industry. For those who are not familiar with, can you tell us more what is exactly sea lice and why is it a challenge for the industry?
Of course, sea lice is a natural parasite that has salmonids, trout, salmon as a host in nature. It transfers very easily over to farmed fish. And when you have farmed fish, you have a lot of individuals together in a limited space in the pens along the coast. And this makes it easier for sea lice to transition from a natural parasite to become a problem in individual cages. Parents with children in kindergartens may know head lice. They spread really fast in these confined environments. And sea lice is a crustacean that spreads easily, infects our fish easily, and is a tricky customer to manage. We have used all kinds of methods, but the sea lice actually adapts incredibly quickly to if we are using chemical means, if we are using mechanical means, fresh water. It adapts incredibly quickly. Some companies are even using laser radiation to shoot the sea lice, and it adapts to it. We use cleaner fish, so we have multiple ways to resolve the issue, but it is a difficult customer. And since we have to treat the fish, we have to reduce feeding in short periods, and that then you lose growth as an industry. We have to use people and boats, and if you add it all together, I think the annual loss directly due to sea lice management practices is probably upwards of 1.4 billion euros. Counting the money is one thing, but there is also the fish and the welfare of the fish. So it's much better to avoid the problem than being really good in treating it. So everything we do in AquaCloud is to get that information together to be able to avoid things and not treat them.
Okay, so more like a proactive approach on being able
Absolutely.
to understand and avoid that. So I'm curious, you are talking about different data. There are some data parameters, factors that you are really looking to be able to prevent and to avoid the sea lice phenomenon. What kind of data are you looking for? And is there a consensus among all the industrial in these sectors of the kind of data that are important for them?
Take the last question first. Yeah, there's a relatively good consensus on what data is relevant, but that is based on the methods and ways and means and technologies we have today. There may be methods coming in the future that will give us incredible insight and value. For example, camera-based systems that count sea lice continuously, gives you literally day-to-day overview of how the fish is actually, or how the sea lice is developing in your cage. So that is something coming. On the other aspect, which data, I think we are receiving upwards of 60 individual parameters every day. So it is from number of fish per cage, the size of the fish, mortalities, reasons to mortality. We have a good standard that the fish farmers use to define why the fish died. So we have insights there. We have obviously sea lice counts. That's very important in all the life stages that we can actually count. The smallest life stages of sea lice are a little bit smaller than a dot after the sentence in a typical book, so they're difficult to see. So you have to have really good eyes to see that. We have obviously kind of treatments, what instruments or chemicals or methods we use, with fresh water or flushing or whatever. We have cleaner fish number and species, and obviously feed, how much did the fish eat or is eating. That is a good indicator of welfare and stress. And the last but not least is oceanographic data, temperature, oxygen, salinity, and we have current direction and speed coming online. So there's a lot of data flowing through.
I understand that there's a lot of data. And how did you manage to make all this raw data into something that helps the fish farmers make better decision every day? Can you give us some example on how it would help in a fish farm to have this kind of data?
The fish farmer usually have quite decent control of their own fish, their own situation with sea lice and diseases as that may happen. But one of the issues we've had is that you don't know what's happening in your region. So you don't have a situational awareness in the bigger picture. And that means you're constantly being surprised by something coming. We are literally in the same water, and the ocean current, they move infections or sea lice from place to place. And if you are completely naive to what's happening, it makes your preemptive work really, really difficult because you don't know what you're planning for. You don't know what you should be expecting in terms of, for example, infective pressure from sea lice. Also, as we have data download every morning from yesterday's data, we know what situations are trending in your local area. And that may be from diseases, but that may also be from like jellyfish or algae or things that are developing in your area. So it's a very complicated picture. And without that multiple eyes that are your colleagues and other companies in a region, it's really difficult for you to have that understanding of what's happening. But you will have that in your local area. But there are surprises floating in the sea.
So I begin to understand why there was this need to make this collaboration among all the different stakeholders and farmers. But as you mentioned, there is still a missing point, which is this global view of the area. And as you say in a smart way, we all share the same ocean, the same water. So it's really important to have this big view on the topic. And talking about that, I've seen examples since AquaCloud is alive, where this shared data approach have helped avoid risk or optimize operation, or even change the way the company collaborates on a specific topic?
What we have seen is it's at least in two ways. One of them is now suddenly you have a lot of data from farmers available very quickly for researchers. Before our system came online, it could take you up to a year to get data from fish farmers. Not because the fish farmers were unwilling to share. The systems they had were not designed to share that kind of data. They were business analysis systems, but not to treat and present raw data in a good way. Now we can, within 2 or 3 days from agreement, we can actually deliver data from 20, 30 companies in a matter of very short time and on multiple parameters depending on what the research project needs. So we have reduced that time to react for researchers down to almost nothing. So we are quite popular with the research community. The companies who are working with the data, they use it to understand what's happening in the bigger picture. They use it in their biosecurity work. They use it in understanding what's trending. They need to understand when they are planning for special situations, what did happen earlier. So they use it to keep themselves sort of in the picture, to understand the bigger picture. Probably the local farmers will share quite a lot of data just from word of mouth, but that is usually the now situation. It's difficult to remember what happened in June 2017, but now you see it again. Why did that happen? So then you can step back into your database or to your neighbor's database without knowing whom it was. So you will now have a huge library of situations that may occur very rarely with you, but frequently with all the others. So you have much greater speed in your analysis to solve that problem. So having that database, you can then learn so much quicker.
I think like all the scientists and researchers that are listening right now,
Oh yeah,
they should fall in love with the AquaCloud, having all this data, this historic, like having a baseline and being able to come back to a specific event, looking at the parameters and understanding the why and the how. I think it's really, really precious. All right, now let's dig into a topic that's often the elephant in the room when it comes to data sharing, which is governance and ownership.
yes.
It's one thing to collect the data, but who owns it, who controls it, and how do you build trust so that company feel safe sharing it? Based on your experience, what are the key success factors for managing data governance and ownership effectively in aquaculture projects?
The absolute minimum is a good legal contract signed by everybody that goes into considerable details the duties and obligations of each part, what I can and cannot do, what they can and cannot do. We have to take into consideration all the laws governing inside trading or market manipulation. Those are extremely critical. GDPR regulations, we have to be absolutely certain that there is no data on individuals, persons being shared. In our systems, there is no such data, but we have to put it into the governance just to make sure that at some point of time we don't come into a situation we didn't anticipate. So it's like having these live boats on your cruiser. You hope you will never use them, but they are there if you need to. But the really, really important aspect is how do we manage the data sharing, both technically on the platform, cybersecurity, and the sharing, what I can share with researchers, for example.
Okay, so really a big legal framework to reassure everyone and to be sure that the data are used in the good way. And as you mentioned, really anticipate as, okay, right now, maybe we don't have this technology or we don't have this application, but be sure that legally we are already prepared to anything that will happen in the industry. And I have one question that come in my mind. Does the industry, the researchers and the farmer were ready in the way they collaborate to speak the same language about the data and also about what were important for them? Or in parallel of the legal framework, it was also a big work from your side to make them understand, to make them connect. I'm curious about that because, for example, at Connection, my company, I try to connect the dots between researchers. You see, sometimes it doesn't speak the same language, it doesn't have the same objective. I'm really curious about this specific topic for you.
Scientists work by certain principles and practices, and I feel that the scientists I work with in the Norwegian industry, they are very much aligned with the needs of the industry because they are working on very practical problems. A lot of them have a sort of basic foundation scientific curiosity, so they are working on what I call free science as well. But a lot of the project we engage in is very practically applied. We have a concrete problem. Do we have the data? Do we have the knowledge or models to resolve it? So I feel that the science and the industry is aligned in their needs. But, and it's a big but, it's not critique, but it is a but. Scientists have a completely different sense of time in their work because they have to go through all the loops of good scientific work, reviews and publications. We need that solution now, yesterday if possible. So there's always that. We have different frames of time and timelines when we're working, and that can be deeply frustrating. But you don't want to get in the way of good publication and good science.
You know that, so I'm from France, and most of the time, Northern Europe countries are really like the good model of this alignment between the industry and the research and the scientists. We know that there is a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion, and that research projects are really focusing on answering the need of the market, the industry, and the society. So when I asked the question, I knew you were kind of the role model for that, but it's interesting to see that even the Norwegian also sometimes have these difficulties.
Yeah, and I think that's international. I think that's absolutely international. So you have these processes you have to go through.
Speaking of making this data governance work, technology and organization often play a big role in making this process smoother. So from your point of view, are there any technology or organizational enablers that have significantly contributed to AquaCloud data management strategy?
I think what has been literally the pivotal point in that is that the organizations who started AquaCloud initially, they were digitally mature, even if different in the maturity. They were mature in their mindset. They were mature in understanding that you can't go this alone. So I think that is more that individual mindset or the organizational mindset is absolutely critical to succeed with digitalization or any industrial revolution as digitalization there is. And I even don't want to talk about digitalization so much. I want to talk about digital transformation, because digitalization is getting all the data, having all the sensors, having standards, and produce a big pile of data, but it's what you do with the data that is the maturity and the understanding. So understanding that you have to move away from thinking about digitalization and going over to thinking about digital transformation, therein lies the pivotal point. And I sometimes compare it with electrification. Nobody discusses if there is electrification in our society. We use the light from electricity to shed lights on or drive industrial processes. But nobody discusses electrification. We all discuss the application of electricity. So digitalization, it has to be there. It's a fundament for what you're talking about. Without digitalization, there is no digital transformation. But we are moving into that transformational phase where we use data to change our ways of producing or processing fish, how we choose locations and sites, and how we even service our customers. I mean, we've had fishing boats and fish farms online showing the customers in Europe, here is where we produce the fish. I mean, it's only a video, but it's a long line of digital transformation, both mindsets and methods and standards. So you can buy fish from a fish farmer in Norway, scan the QR code, and you will see a live video from either the fishing vessel or the fish farms. So these projects have been done to great success. Another consequence is that you can actually see the fish live and understand if they're stressed, if they're infected with sea lice, if they have any troubles developing. That's the transformation. You can sit there and understand things are happening now and change your ways.
You are really one step above in the industry. Like, as you mentioned, digitalization is already there from several years, like open standards, API, all the data collections, the sensors, automatization. So yeah, collection of the data, good. And now really focusing on the digital transformation, on how to use this data, how to adapt your production processes, and also how to make strategic decisions. So I think it's really important point that you mentioned that in Norway you are going really from the digitalization to the digital transformation. Okay, now we have a little more detail about the data privacy, because you mentioned earlier that in the platform, it's more like a broader overview, like an area, a region focus rather than a fish farm focus. How do you balance the challenge for this need for data privacy and this need for open collaboration in AquaCloud?
We operate by a couple of what we call sharing rules. There is data that we cannot share between companies under no circumstances. And those are data that are critical to understand how much fish is available to the market, either now or at some time in the future. So we cannot share the biomass or the number of fish or the size of fish. We just don't do that because that would be highly, highly illegal. Same with if you have issues and you have a die-off in the cages, there can be algae, there can be jellyfish, there can be accidents. If we have an episode like that, that is data that we cannot share. We can anonymize it. We can it's called normalization of data, so you can't spot who had an issue or who has that volume. So by normalizing data and removing all identification parameters there, we can share data, but you have to be absolutely sure that you're not able to extract individual companies from the big picture. And I think we actually use the law designed to protect human data and health, both in research and hospital systems. So that is the system we based our governance on. And that is some of the most complicated and strict set of regulation ever devised in Europe and Norway.
Just another question, because you were saying that you are in some cases anonymizing the data. Did you also have the discussion about the clear rules about the application? Is it also something that you had discussion about?
That is spelled out in black and white. I have my governance, and I have an annex to the governance saying, for example, with, let's say, biomass data. That biomass data has to be at least 8 months old before I can share it, because then it's been reported to the to the financial markets, or the fish has even been harvested and sold. And it depends. If it's per company, I can't share it. If it's per region, I can share it, because then you may have 10 or 15 farmers within that region. So I have in my APC a checklist of do's and don'ts in terms of what I can and cannot share. And even if I go by these rules, which I always do, these rules are indicative or guiding. They are guidelines. They are not absolute legal advice. That's why they are an annex and not part of the governance. So by these rules, I propose to a group of 20 advisors from the fish farming companies. Let's say I work with the Norwegian Veterinary Institute, for example, for a project. And they said, we are going to look into this issue, and we would really like this, and this data. And I go through their needs, and they always ask for everything. That's just how they are. And then we define what they really need and what kind of granularity. Do they need it on region, location, or cage? When we have found the granularity, we look at what data they actually need. And then I take that proposal and bring that to what we call the control group. And I propose to them that we use the data like this. This is the goal of this project. This will be the result for the industry. It will be applied thus. It will be published in those internationally peer-reviewed papers. It will be anonymized and da. And then they look, if they're comfortable with that, they can say, yes, we can do that. Or no, this is too granular, or this doesn't address something we need to solve. So there is always that sort of security valve. They can say yes or no. I can be really enthusiastic and say, that's a cool project, let's do that. And they say, not so much. They haven't said no so far, because we really choose the projects with care that we want to engage in. And then that's a commercial deal for us towards the scientific community. They buy the data because they are saving probably one and a half years in gathering data.
Yeah, so I jumped my next question. What's the business model? How you work
the
with
business
that?
model. We sell data. We sell data to specific projects, to specific users. So we have a user agreement for every delivery of data. In some cases, people are buying some data on a monthly basis, the same data set updated on a monthly basis. In some cases, they have a chunk of data for this area or for this situation or for that application. And that is a one-time sale. And the data isn't cheap. It's absolutely not cheap. But the price depends on how many parameters you need and the granularity of the data. Do you need 1 cage, 10 cages, 100 cages, 1,000 cages? It's a multiplication factor. So it isn't cheap, but it will save you 1 year in research. So that's worth something.
Okay, I'm curious. So yeah, of course, one of your main customer, I understand it's more like the research side because you give them a lot of data that are helpful for their research. But regarding other sectors, you were mentioning veterinary. I'm thinking of maybe insurance. I'm thinking about, for example, technology providers. In your experience, did you have already some contact with this kind of customers? What are the main people who are interested in your data, except research side?
There are those, like you say, different suppliers, bank finance and advisory companies. They are really interested in it. That's an important insight for them to start designing solutions or services. And then we should go back to the maturity of AquaCloud and our partners. And today we are very, selective about what projects we take. At this point in time, we are really focusing heavily on the research side. We are not focusing so much on the supplier side. And this has something to do with learning to share, trust that process, becoming comfortable sharing the data. And it is that growth of maturity that we need to do. And today we have 33 or 34 companies in AquaCloud. We have to go just about as slowly as the least mature company, because our goal is not to go really fast. It's moving the field of fish farmers towards more insight, more transformation, and more maturity. So everybody agree on research institutions of all kinds. They are a priority. We are starting to discuss if we should have a what's called a sandbox or playpen for, let's say, master students who need data. Then we have just a big chunk of data normalized, completely anonymized, so they can just jump into there, extract data, play with it, see if it makes an impact on the scientific work they're doing and developing, without us having to be anywhere close to that, because there is no way to backtrack it to our farmers. So then you can play with this data within that context.
All the ocean hackathon and
Yeah,
aquaculture hackathon would
yeah,
love your set of
for sure.
data.
Yeah. And that is something we want to see, that sort of creative chaos also on data, because that's one thing that we are specifically not doing in AquaCloud. We are not going to be the big analyst of data. We want to supply good data, standardized data, data that is of quality that you can actually trust. But there are so many brains out there. I mean, out there in the world, not necessarily in Norway. Even if we are limited to Norway right now, it is that building trust. But I'm really looking forward to being able to get a sort of a crazy hackathon going on in our playpen and see what good idea goes like bling, like that gold in a pile of coal. I've seen them. I've seen it happen before, and it is amazing.
You know that the next Ocean Hackathon is in October
Yeah, that's
this
right.
year, and I would love to have one day a challenge on aquaculture. Most of the time it's on marine decarbonation,
Yeah.
robotics, and things like that. So, Boggi, let's change up. Let's do a challenge on aquaculture.
That would be really cool. And there's nothing wrong with robotization and decarbonization, but it's so easy to splice that into food production.
You're right. Thank you. It's really interesting. And you just mentioned one thing that I think it's important. Most of the time, it could feel like the boring part of innovation, but it's absolutely crucial, which is the standardization. Without common standards, data can't really be shared or compared. So, in terms of standardization, what are some of the major hurdles you face? And what did you do, and how do this influence your ability to innovate and scale the solution? I'm curious. How did you make standardization?
Standardization. We are so far away from being standardized, even with all the work we've been doing last 8 years. I think we've spotted. We have in our office we have a Miro map with a picture of the value chain, and we have drawn into that map all the places where we have standardization and all the places that we lack standardization. And those red dots are so much more numerous than our blue dots that have standardization. So we are still struggling getting data between individual parts of the value chain. So today it's difficult for us to understand and actually log correctly the genetic stock that's gone into fish farming. We don't always have the information about the vaccines that have been used. We don't always know, for the analysis perspective, this fish has gone through this process, good or bad. And we don't always know or can connect easily the harvesting result, which is literally the open book answer to the process. And we are many years away from having all these dots in blue and connected and everything hunky-dory. But we have done some really important things. We have a major standard worked with a Norwegian standardization company called Norsk Standard or Norwegian Standard, a governmental agency that maintains standards in Norwegian industry and works with ISO standards. So that standard is all about what do we call things? How do we measure? How do we calculate? So there you have all the formulas, all the definitions in one standard. It's long, it's boring, and it's absolutely crucial. Another standard is like, why did the fish die? Individual companies are using their own in-house names that have developed over a long time, and they're meaning the same, but it's completely impossible for us to match it. Or even with sea lice. Sea lice, like every living being on Earth, has two names in Latin. They also have Spanish names, Icelandic, Norwegian, English, and you find a conglomerate of these in the systems. Everybody are talking about exactly the same thing, but we found probably when we mapped sea lice together, the individual definitions in companies, I think I found 10 permutations of what you can call female mature sea lice. It was a mix of Latin and Norwegian and English and their own words, and there was only missing cuss words, bloody sea lice or something like that. And it was incredible. And sea lice has multiple life stages, so you can imagine just with that single item, we had 15, 17 definitions and words. So just
Wow.
mapping.
So
So mapping and standardization is an ongoing process, and we work with it in every project we engage. We try to understand where is the chain broken here. Can we join it even with a band-aid just to start transferring data between processes, but we want to link it in a solid standard, but that takes time.
yeah, I can imagine like having everyone around to speak the same data language
Yes,
with local regional specificities.
absolutely.
So it's good to know that this agency for standardization that is helping in the process. Maybe also I'm thinking about maybe in education with the next generation, maybe they will have some common language in data. Maybe this will
Yeah,
help.
they
I
would
don't know
have
your
to
view on that.
have, yeah, because if you want to develop new technologies, that has to be based on a standardization. Otherwise, all the young smart heads that are coming into the industry, in any industry, if they don't have a standardization, they may never have heard about it. But it's like that, the floor that you're standing on. Without that, you won't be able to do anything.
When I listen to you, I also can see that in the earlier year of the company, I think you spend so much time, I think, in the governance, the legal aspect for the trust, but also I think about the standardization, the data. But in a way, that's good because, as you mentioned, you don't want to grow fast. You want to grow at the same level of the industry and the actor, like that you're sure everyone is aligned and that you have a solution that fit with market.
Yeah. And I don't want to work a standard or a solution that brings 10 companies ahead and drops 30 companies behind. It takes many years to build the trust. It takes only 5 minutes to crush it. So you always have
Right.
to move together. And I mean, we have some of the biggest fish farmers in the world with us, and we have some of the smallest companies, family-owned companies in the world. And you have to make sure that they are an equal. I mean, it's like a mosaic. Every piece has to fit and join the picture. Otherwise, you don't see the full picture.
So it's good for the harmonization of the
Yeah,
practice and
absolutely.
the capacity building of the whole industry. And also, you just mentioned it, like having this good balance to fit with the different maturity and size in the market, like to be sure that the standardization doesn't slow things down too much, but are also an enabler for further development.
And if you have good companies that are strong and they know where they want to do, and you start resolving things, companies who are not ready, they can say, that's how we should do it. So you don't have to develop the methods and mindset for every company. You just have to show them what we are doing so they can shortcut the process. You don't have to go the ABC with everybody. You can jump into the alphabet if you just see how other companies are resolving things. They can see, okay, I can copy that or I can align to that. It speeds up the companies because there's always somebody who's quick. And those quick companies, they pull everybody else with them. So everybody can jump in on it.
How to make sure that small farmers aren't left behind in the data race.
That is really easy. They, from our part, get the same contract governance as everybody else. So they have the same legal environment. They have the same access to the database to get the overviews. We guide them through this process. We make sure that they have understood the contracts they are signing. The ownership of data is equally valid for a tiny company as a very, very big company. You own that small thing that is your data, even if you're not a huge company. And to me, it's equally valuable or responsible to treat them in the same way as the big companies. And in some cases, the smaller companies are quicker to adapt because they don't have the processes a huge company has. And that's quite typical in many innovation aspects. But the big companies often have staff that understands better where all of this is going. So I think you have almost a symbiosis aspect going. the speed of the small company and the maturity of some of the bigger companies makes for a very interesting mix.
So that's good to hear. And as you mentioned, even if there are some difference on the way they approach the projects, the data, and the application, it's good to know that regarding their side or the amount of data they can contribute or their revenue, they can have the same impact and use of the result of the projects.
The small company certainly has access to a huge data set regarding issues they may experience only once in 10 years. But in their local area, there are so many companies that it could be 10 times a year that happens. So they learn really quickly. So they can boost their production or management without having to invest into incredible research projects.
Just because I'm so honored to have a specialist in digitalization and aquaculture, I'm going to ask you what the role of data evolving in aquaculture over the next decade. You're going to have autonomous fish farm, real-time decision-making tools. What's your vision for the future of aquaculture?
I think we will be growing really strong in proactive management practices. We have a better understanding of why things are happening, why have they happened in the past, and how can we avoid repeating those issues. Let's say there's an algae outbreak or something. We start to understand better why that happened. So you will start to be more proactive. I think another aspect will be 3 tiers of management. You have to think about, as an individual fish farmer, you are curious and concerned about your local area. That's your sort of area of influence and the area that influences you, a fjord or something like that. The data set that you produce will make your regional management more sophisticated, more directed, and more precise. So you have to understand, even as a small farmer, you will be contributing to the management of a much bigger area than contains your farm. And by combining all these regions, either in semi large scale or complete scale for all the Norwegian industry, in this case, I think it has to be this understanding that you are a part of that chain. You're part of that governance, and what you do in terms of gathering data, standardizing, maintaining everything, that's important. So we will be moving into a change in mindset, understanding that you are part of that bigger picture. We will be seeing remotely operated farms to a much larger degree than we have today, and we have those today already in Norway. You have feeding centrals feeding 6, 7, or 8 locations. People have been talking about maintaining feeding management in Norway for Icelandic fish farms. That's 2,000 kilometers away. Digitalization will make that distance more or less irrelevant. You will always need to have people out on the farms to maintain them. People who can fix, mend, install. We don't have robotics for that yet. I think we will be seeing underwater technology. We were talking about robotics. I think we will be seeing some kind of robotic swarms. Today we have one cleaning machine that is moved between cages. I think we will have a garage, maybe in individual cages, maybe just on one location, and they spread out and look at the fish, they look at the net, they look at the moorings, they take measurements high and low, and they come back and they speak to each other, and they go back home, they recharge, they download the data, they get new orders, go and check that back, take better pictures, take videos of that panel, go and mend and fix that panel. You might have a big brother robot going out and fixing that problem, so you don't have escapes of fish, or tagging it so that you can send down divers or maintain the nets in other ways. You will probably see completely different set of production management practices. We are starting to take the nets deeper down so that we avoid the sea lice completely. So if your top net is 25, 30 meters down, you have no way of seeing the fish visually. You can hardly do it today in the surface because the cages can actually accommodate Boeing 737. If you hold it by the tail and dip it into the cage, it won't touch the net, neither the wings nor the nose of the plane. Never mind the people inside. They will be stressed, but it won't hurt the net. So if you move that down from surface down to 25 meters down, you will need a completely different management approach. You need to follow the fish. You need to understand how the feeding is going, how their health is developing. So remote operations and remote sensing is moving into this space, and it will jump into it now that we are actually starting to move down into deeper waters. We will see offshore cages, mostly remotely operated. We might see even dynamic farms that move away from an area. So they are like huge, almost ship-like constructions that can actually move either remotely or being managed by a captain and a crew. So they can, let's say in northern Norway, there are some areas that are really good for fish farming, but they're also really important spawning areas for cod or other species. So maybe you can be a fish farmer in that area during the summer, but during the winter when the cod comes in and spawns, you just move the farms away so they don't interact with the cod. Then you have your summer grazing. So it would be like summer grazing. So we're going back to the old Wild West style of farming, moving your fish farms around, being in the best place at every given time. That could be possible. Probably farming salmon in areas you didn't think salmon could be farmed in. I mean, we see farms in China, Japan. They opened a fish farm in Korea just now. We see fish farming, salmon farming popping up in places we didn't expect. And that's all technology.
And what about RAS?
Same. RAS is a completely different beast. It's also a bacterial farm because your filter is a bacterial ecosystem that you need to maintain. So they are tricky, but it can be done, absolutely. And in RAS farms, again, my suspicion is that artificial intelligence might be first applied in managing the biofilters because you have to react to very small chemical signals really quickly, much quicker than you and I can sort of understand what's happening. Because managing micro biological societies, it is a cascade society. When things start to go wrong, they just go wrong and they go wronger and worse, so they can collapse completely. And I think with an AI, you can pick up those small signals in chemistry prior to or after the water has passed through. So I think that's where we will see the first artificial intelligence aspect, where you have analytics. Generative AI will come in much quicker, and I think you will see generative AI in AquaCloud in 8 to 10 months in a way nobody expects. I can't say anything more, but there will be movements to what we are working on, what's called federated AI as well. And federated AI is flipping its entire concept on its head, what we've been talking about, because then you don't gather data into one point for analysis. That's sensitive stuff. You can do mistakes. You can meet companies who are suspicious, they don't want to share data. But why don't we send the intelligence visiting the fish farmers? Go and generate insights on their data in-house with the fish farmer, and they go home with the findings and the insights. So you will have a sort of a hockey stick development when they say, I saw this there, and then they go, I saw that there, and okay, if we combine those two, then that is a solution. And then they go back out to the fish farmers with the insights that generate new questions and insights. They come back, combine that again. So you have this back and forth process of literally, I'm describing it very biologically, but it will be like pulse of information coming into a heart or a brain, being ingested, combined, analyzed, going back out with the findings, getting deeper insights with the fish farmers, but we never move data anywhere. So you are building just a huge library of insights, and that will be a hockey stick. Slow process to start with. In 3 to 5 times, it just go out of the charts. And that's where the new revelation is coming. That's my vision.
Thank you for the teasing, and you're totally right. Like, instead of just capturing the data, having this value circle, a circulation of the data. And also, I think it will be pushing the farmers to share more and more data because they can see the value inside the AI models and decision support tools, and that will feed also the set of data again and again.
Oh, yeah. So it will be both a feedback and enrichment environment.
Boggi, do you have a message for a listener, maybe for the young generation out there who might not realize that their skills are needed in the aquaculture industry? So what would you say to someone who is passionate about data but never imagined working in the fish farming or ocean industries?
As every industry are in a process where things are going to be revolutionized in a way I can't imagine yet. I will observe it, but I can't literally understand how that will change. But without new talent, without new ideas, we will grind to a halt in our industry as every other industry. I know bank and finance, the insurance industry is maybe in the forefront of the AI usage. But if I want to inspire from my own, every day I wake up, I know that I have 600 million individuals that I have a partial responsibility towards. I need them to grow and be healthy, and I need them to generate food. I need them to, I need to be able to say to my children, my family, and my friends that we are producing ethical food in a environmentally sustainable way. And if that's not a meaningful day for what I call data heads and people who are intimate with analysis and understanding and using these systems, I don't think there's much more meaningful way to use that capability, intelligence, and interest than actually producing sustainable food in an ethical way.
Thank you very much, Boggi. That's really an ending that's full of inspiration for the next generation. So thank you for this deep dive into data, ethics, and future of aquaculture. That's truly inspiring to see how collaboration and technology can drive sustainable growth in such vital sectors as you just said. And for our listener, if you enjoyed the episode, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share it with your network, and leave us a review. It helps us reach more ocean innovators. And by the way, these are exactly the kind of topic we'll be exploring at the next Aquaculture Europe conference in Valencia this September. With NOAA's Network of Women in Aquaculture, we are organizing a panel and roundtable on inclusion and how innovation and new technology can enhance diversity and opportunity in the aquaculture industry. So I really hope to meet some of you there in person. So again, thank you very much, Boggi. It was a pleasure having you there. And until then, share this episode, leave a comment, and as always, stay curious. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.